we as Ali Hazelwood stans know that he can't possibly despise her. It's just not in the Ali Hazelwood main man DNA. Hi there, how are you? My name's Catherine. I hope you're doing well. This is the first reading wrap up of 2024 and I am excited. I was really hoping to get a 5-star read for the first month in the year and I didn't. But it has caused me to reflect on how I rate books. I think I've come to realise that I am extremely picky with what I give 5 stars to. I have to have a specific feeling evoked within me once I finished a book for me to give it a 5-star rating. And it happens so rarely because I read some really good books this month. I just couldn't edge them up to that pedestal, you know? But anyway, I'm just gonna get right into it. I started off this year with Emily Wilde's Encyclopaedia of Faeries by Heather Fawcett, and I loved this book so much. It was a perfect pick to start off the new year with, and I kind of went in with that expectation. I wanted to start the year off right. I wanted to read a book that was going to kind of transport me away from the January blues, post-Christmas feeling, and this did it. So, this book follows Emily Wilde, who is an academic in a world that's similar to ours, but with the addition of a fae realm that has various doorways into our world. And she has set off at the beginning of the book to a small village somewhere in Scandinavia, I think, to do some research within the specific fae that reside there. And this is pretty much the last bit of research she has to do to finish the Encyclopaedia of Faeries that she has been working on, which is going to be this like massive deal in the academic world. She works with a man named Wendell, and he turns up unexpectedly at the village she is staying at to help her with her research. During their research there, they encounter various kinds of fae, as well as having to befriend the locals in the village who Emily did not get off to a great start with. It's written in diary form throughout the whole book from Emily's perspective. It's very cozy. I love the world building. I think it was quite refreshing, the descriptions of the fae as quite terrifying rather than like sexy fae that is very trendy right now, a la Sarah J Maas. I like that Emily's character had her faults, especially when it came to interacting with the locals and not knowing how to follow their social rules, and I think it was really nicely balanced out by Wendell's character, who is just effortlessly charming and is able to fit in so easily. I will say though, I'm a romance girly, and the romance in this book, whilst it was cute, I think it was a bit underdeveloped. This is the first book in a series. Is it a duology, or I'm not sure how many books there's going to be. I know the second one has just come out and I think I'm going to read it in February. I'm not sure how many books there's going to be though, so maybe that's going to be further developed in the next book. I hope it's going to have more of a focus, but I just think for me personally, I would have liked more of a development on the relationship side of things. It felt to me like it kind of came out of nowhere with no real justification, but I can also appreciate that the way this is written, it's completely from Emily's perspective, so I kind of can buy that she wouldn't be writing about these feelings that she's refusing to acknowledge, and she wouldn't be writing about how Wendell feels about her, obviously. So I can forgive that as long as we get it in the second book. But yeah, if you're looking for a really cozy read, this is a great one to pick up, especially if you're into fairies. The next book I read was Twisted Love by Huang. I hated this book so much. Can I even remember what happened in it? I'm gonna have to look up the plot synopsis because I truly don't think I can remember. Hang on. Do you know why I read this book as well? I wanted a brother's best friend romance because I've not read many of them, and it just like the inkling took me. I wanted something like that kind of forbidden love tension, but not in a truly like taboo way. Like I wanted it to be quite cute as well, and so I googled that and this book came up probably the most for brother's best friend trope, and I'd heard about it on TikTok and I was like, well, everyone loves this, so I'll give it a go, and I did not love it. This book follows Ava, who has a bit of a troubled past. She has lost a lot of her memories due to like a past trauma that is alluded to throughout the book. We know that her mother is dead. She has kind of a strange relationship with her dad. She gets on with her brother really well, but she was there when her mum died, and since then all memories surrounding that time are just like gone to her. So we've got this kind of mystery going through it, whilst at the same time her brother is a doctor and he's going off to somewhere in South America, I'm pretty sure, to do like a placement there. And her brother asks his best friend Alex, who is kind of a loner rich freak, to keep an eye on Ava. And so Alex is hesitant, but then he ends up moving into her brother's house, which is next door to Ava's house, and very quickly they begin to fall for each other. There's also a plot line going through of Alex's parents and sister were all brutally murdered in front of him when he was younger, and so he's had this big revenge plot plan to take down the person who arranged the murder of his whole family. It's just truly a wild time, and it is not the vibe that I wanted from brother's best friend romance. I just wanted a really cute, like, oh, I shouldn't want you because you're my brother's best friend and he won't like it and it'll be awkward, and I shouldn't like you because you're my brother's little sister and he won't like it and it'll be awkward. I just wanted a simple love story. If you have any recommendations for brother's best friend that is like this, please let me know, because that's what I was craving. I don't know if I'm even craving it anymore because this book was so bad, I thought. I'm so sorry if that offends anyone, because I know people love it and obviously that's fine. This just was not for me at all. I didn't find either of the characters likeable. I thought the writing was really pretty boring. I thought the two background plots for Alex and Ava were just like melodramatic, not in a fun way. So yeah, that was a shame. I know that there are other books in this series that kind of play off different tropes with characters we've already met, but I really can't see me continuing on with anything more from Anna Huang, I'm afraid. It's okay. It was all on the up from here on out, okay? We had a good month after Twisted Love, because next I read Ruthless, Vows by Rebecca Ross, which is the second book in the Letters of Enchantment duology. Is that what it's called? The Letters of Enchantment? Have I made that up? No, it is that. I really second guessed myself there. This book continues on from where the first book left off, so I'm gonna like avoid spoiling you in this plot summary, so it might be a bit bare. How do I do that though? This is a romantasy series, and the first book, Divine Rivals, is set in a world in which a current war between two gods is ongoing and they are recruiting humans in their war efforts. The two main characters and love interests, Iris and Roman, are young journalists who work together at the same paper, are basically competing over their spot there, and certain events lead to them journeying off to the front line of this war to report on it. That's the general idea of this series. The first book is kind of a setup of their relationship and the war and the world, whereas this book you are thrown into the war completely at this point. You have fuller understanding what's going on, and obviously it gets wrapped up at the end. This duology is a really solid romantasy series. I kind of like the idea of reading more duologies. I feel like I always end up going towards trilogies or standalones, but I feel like there's something quite nice about a duology. It feels like a bit more than a standalone to like sink your teeth into, but not as intimidating as a trilogy or longer series where you kind of have to commit. The world building and lore of this world is really well crafted, I think. I like the type of magic that's in this world where it's not fully explained, it's a bit intangible and a bit unpredictable, and it's kind of just incorporated into our world as we know it. This kind of is giving, because of the war and everything, it's giving like World War II vibes but with magic and gods. The love story between Iris and Roman is beautiful. I am not a crier at books. I cry at films and TV all the time, but I think it's because, you know how people say like when they think of something or are trying to like visualize something and they can like see it like fully in their mind as a like object, like they can actually picture it, and then other people like can't see it but they know it. Does that make sense? Am I explaining this right? Like, say I'm picturing an apple. I know what an apple looks like. I'm closing my eyes right now and I can't like see an apple, but I know the concept of an apple. I know what it looks like. I could describe it to you. I could draw it. But like a lot of people, when they close their eyes, they can literally see the apple. I think that's wild. I can't do that. And I think maybe that's why I don't cry at books a lot, because when I'm reading a book, I can understand what's going on when I'm reading. I'm picturing it in a sense, but I'm not able to like visualize it like the way I'm assuming people who can close their eyes and see an apple can do. Am I talking nonsense right now? But yeah, I think that's why I maybe don't cry at books, because like there's a level of detachment there. But my point being, I got to about like, I'd say like maybe here, and I started to tear up, and that never happened. So well done, Rebecca Ross. That's a feat for me, actually. There's a moment at the end of the book when like the big climax is happening, and like in one chapter there's just little breaking sections going through each character and where they are in each moment during the culmination of this big climactic moment. And it was like watching a movie for me. It was amazing. I was so emotional. So yes, I actually can't give a better review than that. But yeah, love, love, love. I want to read more of Rebecca Ross, definitely. Next up, I read The Dance Tree by Kiran Millwood Hargrave. I read The Mercies in 2023 and it was in my top 10 books, definitely, if not my top 5. I heard about this on Between the Covers on BBC, and as soon as I heard the concept of it, I was sold immediately. I would like to preface this by saying I am not a historical fiction girly, really. I am not drawn to historical fiction unless it's like historical romance. I think that's something that I've realised since starting this YouTube channel, that most of the historical fiction books that I've read have kind of been meh for me, except The Mercies and now this book. I love this. I still preferred The Mercies, but this was incredible too. This follows a woman called Lisbeth who is pregnant but has suffered many miscarriages before. She is best friends with another woman called Ida, who is married to a horrible man who has some power within the church. This is set in Strasbourg in the 1500s, so the church is basically in charge of everything. And Lisbeth's life becomes a lot more complicated with the arrival of her sister-in-law, Net, who has been gone for the past 7 or so years to pay penance for a crime that Lisbeth doesn't know anything about, but that was bad enough that Net got sent away to a convent to rid herself of her sins, basically. Lisbeth's husband and mother-in-law refused to talk about what Net did, what happened before Lisbeth arrived, so she is very wary at the idea of Net returning home. Meanwhile, the weather is crazy. This is the hottest summer Strasbourg has known. They've not had any rain. They are struggling for food, and women have started dancing uncontrollably and hysterically on the streets and can't stop unless physically restrained. So whilst the main plot of this book is fiction, the setting of this dance plague in this endlessly hot summer is historically factual. There was a dance plague where women danced non-stop for months on end, dancing themselves to death in a lot of cases. And as soon as I learned that that's what this book was about, I had to know more. I found the same thing in The Mercies with Hargrave's writing. Is she is so good at transporting you into a specific time and place. The way this is written, with the focus on the heat and this kind of hysteria that is plaguing Strasbourg, it's so viscerally done. And that's just the tip of the iceberg, because the actual plot of this book is incredible as well. The 3 women it focuses on are each so different to each other, but each so strong and lovable and and so easy to root for. It's a book about womanhood and love and injustice. I'm so happy that I liked it, and I'm so excited to read more from Hargrave. I honestly think she's becoming one of my favourite authors, and it's not even like fantasy romance. Look at me go. And now we're going to move in what I'm going to call the Ali Hazelwood section of this video, because from this point on I only read Ali Hazelwood. I want to make some more videos this year that are more long form, of me over the span of a few weeks or months focusing in on one particular author or one particular longer series that I've never read before. And I thought that I would start with Ali Hazelwood. So that's what I did for the rest of January. I was reading Ali Hazelwood and filming my reactions for an upcoming video that focuses on Ali Hazelwood's books. I didn't think that I was going to read all of her published books so far in the rest of January. I thought I was going to spread it out more, but I ended up really enjoying her writing. So I just went in hard. And I started off, of course, with The Love Hypothesis. You'll have heard of this book. It is TikTok viral. Everyone loves this book, and I needed to know what the hype was about. This was the book that was initially published as a Raylo fanfic, and it follows our main character Olive Smith, who is a PhD student who ends up randomly kissing a professor at her university in order to convince her best friend that she is over her ex-boyfriend so that her best friend doesn't feel guilty about fancying him. This professor is called Adam, Adam Driver, and he ends up suggesting to her that they enter into this fake dating relationship so that her best friend can go on happily dating Olive's ex, and so that his employers at the university can see that he is settled down with someone, so they will release funding for a project that is currently withheld from him because they're worried he's a flight risk at the university. This fake dating relationship obviously develops into real feelings. Adam has been pining after Olive for literal years, and they fall in love. Spoiler alert, this was a solid read, but it did end up being my least favourite of Ali Hazelwood's works. That's not to say it was bad, because I liked it enough that I went on to read every other book that she's written. It was really fun, and I think it is worth the hype. But I think for me, compared to her other books, which I will talk about, their relationship was just the least interesting to me. The side characters were the least interesting to me. The setting was the least interesting to me. I also have to say, this book makes a lot of like spicy book talk lists, and I don't think the spice was there for me. If I'm remembering correctly, there was only like 1 or 2 scenes, and I didn't think it was that crazy. So that was a little bit of a letdown, because I was expecting a lot from the way people go on about it. But it's okay, because Ali makes up for it in her other books. I think for a first book, it was excellent. I rated it like 3.75 stars, which is amazing. So a good start. Then I went on to read Love on the Brain, and I became feral. This was my favourite one. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, this was my favourite one. The main character in this book is B, who is a neuroscientist who is recruited for this neuro-engineering project at NASA to design this new type of helmet that is going to be groundbreaking for astronauts and space travel. So she goes off to NASA and finds out that the head engineer that she'll be working with on the project is Levi, who she overlapped with for a year during her PhD and who she believes despises her a lot. We, as Ali Hazelwood stans, know that he can't possibly despise her. It's just not in the Ali Hazelwood main man DNA, and he has actually been pining after her for years. Sound familiar? So pretty much B and Levi are working together, and B is convinced that Levi is sabotaging her work to get rid of her from the project because he hates her that much. That's not the case. They actually end up working together really well and falling in love. I don't know what it was about this book that like just tickled me. I loved B and Levi's chemistry so much. I love the side characters, especially the side relationship between, is it Rossio and Kaylee? Casey, I think. That was super cute and entertaining. The climax of the book was wild and something I did not see coming. Well, I saw a little bit of it coming, but the way that it played out at the end was completely shocking to me. If you've read it, I think maybe you know what I'm talking about. The spice was so much more entertaining and more of it, which is what I kind of was expecting from Love Hypothesis and what I got from this one, which was amazing. This was really, really good. 4.5 stars, amazing. Then I went on to read Love Theoretically, which is so close to being my favourite, I think. Like, depending on my mood, it could be a toss-up between Love on the Brain, because this book was way more emotional for me than Love on the Brain. Love on the Brain was like a romp, and while they're all romps, I feel like Love Theoretically was much more emotionally hard-hitting. Surprisingly so. I wasn't expecting to read an Ali Hazelwood book that felt as emotional as this. I think this book, out of all of her works, for me was the one that dived deepest into like the main character's psyches. So this book follows Elsie, who is a theoretical physicist and an adjunct professor, meaning that she doesn't have one full-time job. She kind of has to jump between different universities, teaching different classes. It's a hectic lifestyle. It doesn't pay well, so she has a side gig where she dates people for money, essentially. And she's dating this guy called Greg, who she goes to family functions with because he wants to convince his family that he's in a long-term relationship when he doesn't really want to be anyway. And Greg has a brother called Jack who is a bit weird towards Elsie. She doesn't think that he likes her, surprise surprise. So when Elsie has a job interview for a tenured professor position and finds out that Jack is on the board, she panics. Jack is a experimental physicist and Elsie believes that he hates theoretical physics, thinks it's pointless and thinks it's all just speculation and fantasy thinking. And so he basically doesn't want her to get the job. He has his eyes on someone else to get the job, and he also is immediately suspicious of her because he knows her as a librarian who's dating her brother, which is a lie. So this is essentially like kind of enemies to lovers set against this academic background, and it was so flipping good. A lot of this book deals with kind of Elsie's people-pleasing tendencies, how she switches aspects of her personality out depending on who she's interacting with in order to like make the other person happier and appease to them. And she doesn't do this with Jack because she doesn't like him and she doesn't care what he thinks of her, but he's also the only person who can see that she switches personalities with everyone else and he is intrigued by her. I think more than the other books, the stakes of this just felt so real and high, of her like really struggling for money and really just needing this job. And so you kind of feel the hatred that she feels toward Jack, who is trying to stand in her way of achieving this more so than the other books. I feel like in the case of a lot of enemies to lovers, you go in and you, as a reader, know it's supposed to be enemies to lovers, but you do quite like the supposed enemy character, you know, and you root for them. Whereas in this book, I was not rooting for Jack. I didn't like him until the turning point in the book where Elsie starts to like him. I was like with her feelings completely all the way through, and I think that's so rare for me to kind of agree with a character so strongly throughout a whole book on their opinions of the love interest. So I thought that was expertly done. I was just so drawn into this story. This was also 4.5 stars, so it's similar to Love on the Brain in terms of enjoyment, but just like enjoyed in completely different ways. Then I read Check and Mate by Ali Hazelwood, which is her first and only young adult book, which follows 18-year-old Mallory, who is really, really, really good at chess. She could have been a grandmaster if she had stuck with it, but at 14 years old, she gave up chess due to something that happened that was dramatic involving her dad. She hasn't looked at chess since, but her mum is struggling with some sort of chronic illness, and she has two younger sisters still in school, and so she is kind of having to take care of her family and they're tight on money. And when she realizes that playing chess professionally can end up making you lots and lots of money if you're good enough, she enters back into that world and meets the world chess champion, Nolan Sawyer, who becomes a bit obsessed with her when she ends up beating him at some charity chess event that doesn't actually mean anything. Throughout the story, they become closer to each other, and you see Mallory beginning to fall in love with him at the same time as she's beginning to fall in love with chess, as much as she's trying to distance herself from it and treat it as purely a job, but she doesn't want to get obsessed with it again because of whatever happened. At the same time, she's really struggling with the fact that her best friend has gone off to university. Mallory has begun kind of like isolating herself from her best friend because she thinks that her best friend will find new friends, and she just feels like she's getting left behind. This book is really, really good. A really good YA romance. I will say, I think it's more of a mature YA. Sex is talked about a lot in it, and there are some like sexy moments. It's just not like explicit, which is why it can be sold as YA, I guess. But yeah, it is still like a little bit more on the mature side. The plot and angst and driving forces of the story were really well done. I think the relationship between the two love interests was really engaging, and the chess stuff was fun. That's what I like about Ali Hazelwood's writing the most, I think, is obviously I love a romance. I love watching people fall in love. The thing that I think puts Ali Hazelwood like a bit above other romance writers for me, she sets a lot of her books apart from Check and May. All of her other books are in STEM settings and has a real focus on women in science and kind of the difficulties of being a woman working in science and the difficulties of just working in academia anyway. I was never good at science. I don't know much about that world, so like I feel like I'm truly learning when I'm reading her books as well, and I'm getting more of an insight into this world. It's just really, really engagingly written. The same happens in Check and May in terms of like this chess world. I felt like I was learning not so much about chess, about how to play chess, but more just about like the world of chess tournaments and misogyny within the chess world, which was really, really good. And then finally, I ended January reading Ali Hazelwood's 3 short stories, which I read in the collection Loathe to Love You. The first short story follows a woman whose PhD mentor, who was really close to her, has died and left her half of a house to move into, and she ends up moving into the house with the person who already lives in there, which is her PhD mentor's nephew, I think. They end up falling in love, and it's kind of implied that like the PhD mentor set it up that they would fall in love with each other. Very, very cute. The second short story follows 2 engineers who randomly meet one day and have this 24-hour love affair, which quickly falls apart when our main character thinks that her love interest has betrayed her professionally and stolen a client from her company, but they end up resolving things because they are stuck in an elevator together. And then the third short story is about a woman who hooks up with a NASA scientist while she's doing her PhD because she's interviewing him for a project she's doing. They part ways, and then when she starts working at NASA, they meet again. The tension is high, but when she goes off to do something at an Arctic research station, she ends up getting into a sticky situation that he turns up to save her from. These short stories were really, really cute. I think my favourite one was the third one. I liked them as a couple the most. They were just, yeah, they were just cute. Feminist, is that what we call it? Romance stories. I think for me though, with the exception of the third one, I think the third one was really well done. The other 2, I think, needed longer books to kind of get me into their characters and the romance to have a real impact. But yeah, a lot of fun, and it's made me super, super hyped for Bride, which is coming out this month, which I'll also be including in the video that I'm putting out that focuses on Ali Hazelwood. So yeah, if you want more in-depth, like off the cuff, real-time reactions of me reading all of these Ali Hazelwood books, you can watch that video when it comes up. I think it'll probably be up sometime later this month. But that's it. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope that you had a good January and you have a really good upcoming week, and yeah, I'll see you next week. Bye!